Hey there, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner, your hosts of the Arner Adventures Podcast.
We're a minimalist couple driven by intentional living and adventure.
Burned out from the 24/7 grind of running our business, we traded the hustle and the bustle for something more meaningful.
We parted ways with most of our belongings and moved to the coast.
Listen along as we chat about life's challenges, share inspiring stories of those who have taken big leaps to live a life outside of the norm,
and help you live with more intention and less physical and mental clutter.
Each episode is a step toward doing and being just a little bit better for ourselves and the world around us.
Life's an adventure after all. Join us for the ride.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Jerry.
And we are back for episode 149 of the Arner Adventures Podcast. We are just ahead of Halloween, and we thought for this week's episode, let's have someone on the show who is the expert in all things ghosts, hauntings. What else, Jer?
Orbs, anomalies, and frightening family folklore. That's Shannon's mom, Beverly.
Mom, welcome to the podcast for the third time.
Yes, thank you, all you ghouls and goblins.
Well, the reason we want to do this is, first of all, it's fun, and we think that it's probably time for a fun episode.
Oh, yeah.
And leading up to, as we're recording this, we're just, or the day it drops, we're just days away from Halloween.
Uh-huh.
So we thought this would be fun. I will preface it very quickly that if you hear anything during the episode, it may or may not be a ghost. It also could be my neighbor doing his landscaping. So we thought, you know what? We have such a, I think in our family together, we live in one of the most haunted places. Not only do we have the perfect guest, but we also live in one of the most haunted places in North Carolina, maybe even the world.
Oh, it could be. It's right up there. Beaufort.
Beaufort.
One of the best small towns in North Carolina, too.
It's one of the coolest towns in the United States.
Yeah.
That is an award, and it was awarded that.
Yep.
So with our history from Blackbeard to shipwrecks, this little seaside town is the perfect backdrop for our chilling conversation. So we often consult with Mom on things that happen that may be a little eerie in our lives, in our home.
Mm-hmm.
A most recent consult was after recording some content that we thought, oh, there's an anomaly. And she, with her expertise, said, it is just dust. So, Mom, welcome to the show. We're so excited. We do have some organization to this conversation. We're going to try to keep it that way because all three of us together could get pretty off topic a number of times.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But why don't you tell us and our listeners how you got so involved in all the ghostly feels? I mean, we love ghost adventures as much as the next person, but you seem to be a bit of a professional. So how did all this come about?
I think it started when I was younger. Even as a little kid, I noticed things and felt things that nobody else did. I would remember things that nobody else did, with the exception of my daddy. Sometimes he would remember very similar things, or he could recollect something about, something I would say, do you remember when? My mother never believed any of it. But I think it was that and a lot of just feelings. And then, of course, when I go back to my dad, he had a lot of experiences with hauntings when he was younger. And he and his siblings, he was one of 9. They all would tell very similar stories, with the exception of their experience, because they had individual experiences. And they would talk about this particular house. And I was very interested in that because it related to some of the feelings that I was having, even as this little kid.
And I think it's interesting too that these people don't know who your dad was, but I will just say that one of the things that I think is really interesting is that he was not someone who would just make up stuff. Like it wasn't like that. So
no, when he told it, when he would tell the stories along with his siblings, you could see the fear on their face. They specifically dealt with some really horrible stuff there. And I know that he and his brother took my brother and my brother's best friend back to the house before it was demolished. And neither one of my daddy or his brother would go back in there.
We've talked a lot about how you have a lot of empathy, mm-hmm. and that you pick up on a lot of emotions and feelings and things around you, some that you see, some that you don't.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I had this, I can look back and say I've had this my whole life, but I didn't know what it was. I knew I would experience things in ways that other people weren't experiencing them, to my detriment sometimes. But I didn't know what it was until I was told as an adult what was going on. And it was at that point that I started understanding, and then got into the research of it. I wanted to know what was happening. And then, of course, we get into our horror and our paranormal research stuff that we do.
I feel like over the past year, and we've talked about this on another episode about just ways to escape and TV and stuff. But Jerry, you've talked about how we've really gotten into Ghost Adventures.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we have. It's good escapism. It's now that's a little more. It's a little bit humorous too at the same time.
Yeah. It is.
It's scary. I think it's scary. Some of them are really scary, and sometimes we laugh a lot. But yeah, I mean, some of it can happen on the show, and I just go, oh my God, like it scares the crap out of me. So speaking of the ghostly stories, adventures, all of that, we have some organization. We're going to do sort of a round robin on various things that we each have encountered.
Yep.
And so we've got some different topics. So the first one we're going to do is each go around and talk about our most recent ghostly encounter. So each of us is going to share the most recent experience that they have had that's been either super spooky or, that you do believe was a haunting experience. Mom, why don't you start?
Oh, there's so many.
We're most recent.
The most recent that I had was 2 at about the same time. And I was and there's this theory that when you are really not paying attention, you're kind of in your zone. That's when things will happen. It's because you're kind of in this world, but you're not. If you can follow me, things are happening around you. When you're doing something and you look up and hours have passed.
Yeah.
So during that time, you can pick up on a lot of things. And I was at school. This is before I retired, but it was that year. It was 2019, and I was at school and I was preparing things for, doing my prep work for the next day. And I was totally in the zone. And all of a sudden in my peripheral, I saw my dad standing there, and he was smiling at me as if he was to say he was happy that I was happy. I got great feelings from that. I had no negative. And in fact, what I said was, "Hey, Daddy." And right after that, he went away. I went to the sanatorium in West Virginia, and to save my life right this minute, I can't think of the name of it, but it's haunted. And it was a whim vacation that
I was going to say, let's make sure we say that it was a tourist destination sanatorium.
It was a tourist destination.
You weren't admitted.
No. Could have been, but it was closed down.
Right.
But anyway, so we went in and we were given a tour, and we walked into this room, and I did not know what the room was, but I got this overwhelming sadness, and I started tearing up and started crying. And I couldn't figure why. I felt like my chest was constricted and I just wanted to bawl. And when the guide started talking about it, it turned out it was the room that they did the lobotomies in. And it was at that moment I knew this is what this is, being the empath. And then we walked into another room, and we were standing there, and all of a sudden this cold breeze, and I'm telling you that it was blowing my hair and not anybody else's. And so I felt like, I was picking up on some stuff there, but it was very sad, very sad.
Wow.
That's something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, Jared, what is your most recent encounter?
I haven't had many, but I did have one in recent years, and it was at Bev's house in the first house y'all were at in Pittsburgh.
Siler
City, that old farmhouse.
Uh-huh.
And you had already had the experience of hearing. You saw the dogs looking, and you heard the footsteps on the doggy camera.
Yeah, and the door, people knocking at the door, and I'd go, and there was nobody there.
So what did you experience?
I didn't even know that. Well, yeah, we slept there the one night, and you slept with Betty on the couch, our dog Betty, on the couch up in the living room, and there was only the one little single bed in the back, so I slept on that. And I heard these footsteps coming down the hall, and I was like, I didn't say anything to you, but I thought, what is Shannon doing? Like, walking to the bathroom, I guess. But I know I never saw a light. I never really heard the footsteps go back, and I think I just shrugged it off, honestly. And this was before you had told the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I did just shrug it off at the time, and then after you told those stories, it hit me. It's like, Because that was not like you. Usually, when you go to bed, you wouldn't get back up and go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
we had our own bathroom. So
no, he's talking about me. Like,
yeah.
I didn't get back. And then he asked me the next day, or maybe after you had the conversation, oh, did you go to the bathroom? I said, no.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when then you realized it was that encounter.
Yeah.
And you had a little fear about that.
I think we still have fear about it.
Yeah.
That was also the house where Betty would never walk across the hearth thing at the fireplace.
Yeah.
She never would walk across that area right in front of the fireplace. She walked around it, like would walk straight, but then would stop and walk around it. And it was really strange.
Yeah. If you're anything like us and have a deep love for the ocean, you are a thalassophile.
Well, we've got something special for you. It's the Thalassophile Soy Candle from our collaboration with Southern Oak Artisan.
This hand-poured candle is crafted with the highest quality ingredients like all of Southern Oak Artisan's products. 100% natural soy and clean oils, completely free of toxins. You can enjoy the ambiance it creates without sacrificing your health.
I love that you said ambiance correctly.
Yeah, thank you.
The scent, it's like bringing a day at the sea right into your home. Perfect for all you ocean lovers out there.
Or should we say, thalassophiles.
But it's more than just a candle. Once it's finished burning, this adorable jar can be repurposed.
Head over to arneradventures.com/shop to get your Thalassophile soy candle and check out our other mindful wares.
And the best part, a portion of every purchase goes to support mental health advocacy groups, which you can read all about on our Mindful Wares page.
So light up your life, support a great cause, and bring a bit of the ocean's magic into your home with the Thalassophile soy candle.
Again, that's at arneradventures.com/shop. And now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, one spot in the house.
Yep. Well, my most recent encounter is kind of a combination of encounters, but it's in this house.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the most recent pertinent one is like if I'm in the second room in there with the door shut, and it's happened numerous times where I have heard footsteps or someone walking by that's very obvious. And I can either be in the house by myself while Jerry's been asleep and I've been in there and I'm working, and I'll hear someone walk across our floor. And we live in an old house in Beaufort, and the floors, you can hear people like when someone walks on it, and I'll look and there's no one there. But I would say that the thing that happens a lot here is that, but also the smell of like, we think someone or something is smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like when Rachel lived next door, she smoked, and it would happen when we first moved in, and we'd go outside to be like, oh, she's standing by her window.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't. And Haywood smoked, but he wasn't outside. But now neither one of them are there. And no one around us, our house, smokes. No one outside smokes. And we can still walk through the house sometimes and go, that's weird. Like it smells like someone's smoking.
Uh-huh.
And now, being the ghost adventure expert of watching it, we now know that there can be some residual scents or, things that you hear of people who might have been here in the past, which is, while very terrifying, it's also like, okay, as long as that's all they do, I'm fine with that.
Uh-huh.
Like I can handle that. But that, I would say that's my most recent ghostly encounter.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good one.
You had another one. Do you remember the graveyard?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that was the most recent.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay, so the number 2 topic we're going to talk about, all three of us, is the scariest encounter of all time. You go.
There was this house that I call the home place. It was my great grandfather built it, and that's where the kids, they didn't grow up there, but they spent most of their life there. There was something about that house that even as a young child scared the mess out of me, and I knew there was something bad there. I didn't know what it was, but I felt like it came from the past. And even as a kid, like 5, 4, I knew it. I knew there was something really bad there. I remember that there was one time I was in 6th grade, and we didn't live there until 6th grade. We lived there 1 year because we were trying to move, sold the house trying to move, and hadn't found one. And when they told me that we were moving into that house, I just wanted to die because I was so terrified of that place. And I'm not terrified of most ghostly stuff, but that really terrified me. So I stayed there for a while, and then I gradually started going over to my grandmother's, which was next door, and I ended up moving in with her. I would go back during the day, and I would do things for Mama. Like I I would wash the dishes. I would, clean and stuff like that. And it was a shotgun house. So if you don't know that, in the South, you have a shotgun house, which means you could stand at the front door and shoot a shotgun and it go right out the back door, straight through the house. Yep. And they had closed in the back part of it and just made it windows and a wall. That was where the sink was. So I'm facing the back of the house in the backyard, which was not good either. But I'm washing dishes and listening to music, and I hear my name called. And the hair was rising up on the back of my neck and my arms, and I was terrified to turn around because I didn't know what was going to be there, but I knew something was. And I heard my name called again. And there was a back door that was right there to my right. And I thought, I just need to get to that door. And I tore off out of that house and went next door to my grandma's, and I told her. And my grandma always believed me. But I was terrified, and I had to go back in that house, because I had to do chores and stuff, but I didn't go that day. I was done with it that day. God. I got so many more stories about that house and my spinster aunt that lived there, who I'm convinced now, didn't know it, suspected, but I'm convinced now that she really was a witch. She was mean as hell. And, and I'm convinced that she did some stuff. I really do believe it. So I believe that whatever was happening in that house, she had something to do with it. And, and I felt like she loved torturing me. And I think she knew that I picked up on some stuff. And so, and I think that there was something very evil, and there was a particular closet that I'll tell you right now, I've never looked inside that closet and was terrified to go by it. So, but I felt like if there was a portal in that house, it was in that closet.
We need to send Zach there. He would tell us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Jerry, scariest encounter of all time.
Well, the only other one I can even think of, one time my friend David Wells and I were walking through our neighborhood. I think we had camped out one of our yards or something. And so it was late at night, and in the summer, and we walked out, and we're teenagers, and we're just walking out through the roads, and we walked by this house, and this was kind of an odd one because there was, in the front yard, there was just like a group of trees where it looked like they might have tried to plant something in between them. So they had like one of those rope, not a rope, but like that strip kind of thing, that the yellow tape, but I don't think it was yellow. Yeah. But it was around the trees, and it was just going up and down and up and down. Like somebody had their hand on it and was shaking it. Mm-hmm. And there was a street light there too that was kind of cast some light on it, so you could kind of see around it, and it was just moving like that. And I remember stopping and looking at it, and then I said, "Look at that!" And we looked, and we both went, "No, we should keep moving." I still remember that. So
you never told that. You never told me that one. Yeah,
no, I've never heard that.
I don't know if I might have.
You think you blocked it? You suppressed it?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
I think that when things happen, how old were you?
Oh, probably somewhere between 14 and 16.
Yeah. I think sometimes if you're not talking about it a lot and scary things happen, like there's one we're going to get to later that I thought about that I forgot about until I thought about these prompts. But anyway, I think sometimes we suppress them.
Yeah.
So my scariest of all time, and it's probably not even going to sound that scary. I just remember the way I felt. And I remember, like, Mom, you talked about a while ago, the hair on your body just standing up. Like, I remember this happening. Mm-hmm. But, and I think you both might have heard this story before, but, in our previous business, Pet Nanny, I was at this house and, taking care of their dogs, pet sitting, and they had a fenced in backyard, and the way that their house and the subdivision sort of backed up to like this, kind of a little bit of a wetland area, but on the other side of that was a green cemetery. And a green cemetery, for those of you who might not know, is a cemetery that's specifically for people who want to be buried in either a eco-friendly, I don't know, like a bag, or I don't know what, like a wrapping or something, basically, so that you become the part of the earth again. Like, instead of being buried in like this box that's going to be there forever, or this cement tomb that's going to be there forever, it's a way of like your body. I don't know why they don't just cremate them, but maybe they don't want to be cremated. They just want their body to be buried. Nevertheless, it's completely legit. Like, you can look it up, green cemeteries. I didn't know it was there until I had gone and done the consult. They told me about it, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not. I'm just telling you that for factual setting up of the situation. So I'm in the backyard. It is dusk, so I can still see around me. The sun might be setting, but it was still light enough where I could see things. And I'm out there with the dogs. They're running around. I was throwing the ball. And behind me, plain as day, I hear what I think is Jerry. And it's a man's voice. It sounds like Jerry that says, "Hey, Shannon." And I turn around, like, my initial thought is, if Jerry's here, something's very wrong. And my heart, and I turned around and he wasn't there. And I don't even just mean like maybe a whisper. I don't mean anything crazy. But it was like the name Shannon was so plain, so clear, steps behind me. And every hair on my body stood up. And I told those dogs, get in that house. And we got in as fast as we could. I don't remember how much time I spent there with them because I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go outside of the house.
Yeah.
But I remember it like it was yesterday. And I know that doesn't even sound very scary. But for me, and I was a full-on adult, this wasn't many years ago, it is still to date the scariest I've ever felt. Ever.
Well, you listen to when the hair on your neck and your arms and stuff start, you listen to that because there is something happening. You don't know what it is, but something is happening.
Yes.
And then if you hear your name called, that's
just so plain, and me swearing it was Jerry. And I don't even mean like I was in the backyard and, oh, somebody might have yelled it in the front. No, I thought Jerry was maybe 5 feet behind me. Like it was that close. Scared me to death. To date, it is the scariest I've ever felt. Wow. Yeah.
Well, I believe that because I hear my name being called all the time. And I've told you before, I hear you say mom a lot. And I will answer at times knowing full well you're not here, but I will answer because at that moment, I'm not thinking about the fact that you're not here. I've heard my son twice and that's it. And he always called me Ma. So I heard him say Ma and I'd turn around, but it wasn't, there was nobody there, but I hear you often.
I think it's interesting that you have told me that you have heard it and we'll talk. And usually I have been in a situation where I was in a lot of distress.
Yeah.
And I think that is so, I think we talked about this on the episode where we talked about mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah.
That oftentimes we talk every morning and oftentimes you will lead the conversation with what's going on. And I'll be like, gosh, how does she always know? And I tell you, and lots of times you'll say, well, I had a dream about you last night. Or you'll say, I heard you say mom. And I just think that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So the third one is the scariest childhood story. So something about a scary experience or something that was scary from your childhood, but left a lasting impression. Mom, I think we know where you're going to go because you led up to that, but you tell us yours.
Let me start where I said about my dad having experiences, and that never scared me. That intrigued me so much because I thought, well, I'm not crazy because somebody else thinks it. Okay, so this house, the home place, I told you about the closet, and I told you, about how this aunt of mine, and I have to tell you, her name is Flossie, but they called her Floss, like dental floss. I love to say that. And they didn't say Aunt Floss. They always said Ain't Floss. And I've always thought it with haint because in the South, that's a ghost.
I did not know that, by the way.
You didn't know that about the South?
No.
Yeah, it's a haint.
I've heard that, yeah.
And you paint you've heard about painting your porch ceiling blue.
Yeah, I knew that. I thought it was to keep the evil spirits away.
It is the haints. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
But Jerry's going to do some fact checking while you tell your story, but go ahead.
Okay. So
he's going to interrupt. All right, go ahead.
Haint is a word that refers to a ghost or evil spirit and is often used in context of Southern folklore.
Wow. Okay. All right. So haint floss.
Yeah. Haint floss. Okay. So she would punish us or try to correct our behavior with things that were terrifying. Let me just say terrifying. So as these tiny little influential kids, when she'd say, you need to be quiet, you need to calm down, you need to whatever, she would say, Aunt Sis is coming to get you and turn you into a jar of molasses. Now, I did an essay on this one time, like why molasses? And I honest to God, and it got published. I honest to God don't know where the thing about the molasses came into. But Aunt Sis, we had no idea who this was, but all we knew was that it was somebody very evil. And I asked my grandmother one time, who is Aunt Sis? And she said that it was a homeless woman who lived in downtown Raleigh and just walked the streets and would scare kids. So I'm like, okay. Anyway, she would say that she's coming to get us. And you remember that back door I talked about? It was a door that half of it was windows. And so because it was in the corner, if you open the door all the way, there was a little space behind it, but we could open up the curtains and see what was happening in the house. But that was what we thought was a safe place, but we were still terrified. So she would say, Aunt Sis is coming to get you. And she would go into this other closet and she would come out and something was stuck out and it looked like a horse's head. And she would say, that's Aunt Sis riding in on the horse. And we would see nothing but the horse's head. And I mean, it was almost like wet your pants kind of fear. And we get behind this door and we peep out and we were screaming to the top of our lungs, just screaming and holy terror. And then the horse would back up and it would like move its head and stuff and it would back up. And then in a little while, she'd come out. Well, when we got older, my cousin, who was the same age as I was, when we got older, we got a little bit more emboldened. And we decided one day we were going to find that horse's head in there. We tore that closet to pieces, overcoming all our fear because we wanted to prove this to be wrong.
Yeah.
We found anything in that closet that could resemble. And I remember it was white. It wasn't exactly a horse's head. So it wasn't like furry or anything like that, but it was the shape and it was white. And I mean, when I got older, I was thinking about, in Revelations and the 4 horsemen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this must've been the white one. But anyway, this is what I related this to. And I've never, ever found anything in that closet. We went through trunks. We went through everything. Because I thought, okay, maybe she wrapped something around some kind of something in there to make it the shape. But honest to God, there was nothing in there that we could determine was that. And so I would have to say that was extreme terror on my part.
I mean, she was sort of like, if you really talk about it, she sort of was an abuser.
She was an abuser. And even my daddy picked up on that. But I will tell you that she did things like that. And the fact that we couldn't figure out, like we couldn't find how it happened, made it worse. And that is what, and she would look at you. She had this evil look about her. And especially with me. And I'll tell you that it was all hate toward me. But she would, and she had this evil look about her. And all she had to do was look at you and you knew some shit was coming down.
Wow.
Yeah. She was terrifying. Terrifying.
Oh God. Yeah. She sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my therapist wonders why I have anxiety.
I was going to say, gosh. So Jerry, scariest childhood story.
This is a good one. When we moved to North Carolina when I was in 3rd grade. So it was a year or so into that. And we lived in this split level house in Cary. My brother had stayed up. He's 10 years older than me. I was like 8 years old. He was 18. And he had stayed up in Pennsylvania where we came from and stayed at college. So he decided to come home for Christmas break, but make it a surprise. Mom and Dad were out, I think, at a company Christmas party or something. Because it was kind of unusual, like a weeknight, but they were out. And I think it was just that, like a company Christmas party. And my sister and I, we had gone somewhere and came back. So it's wintertime. So it's already dark. It's like 6 p.m. or something. And we come up through the downstairs. There's a foyer, a big foyer. We were just kind of doing whatever we were doing and talking. And I saw a head go pop back and forth. And it was from the upstairs, the steps that led to to the bedroom. No.
We're hearing stories we've never heard.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I just thought of that. You
have really suppressed some stuff.
You think of something, I was like, oh, that, yeah. And
how do you live your whole life and not even talk about that?
I don't know. But anyway,
oh my God.
I didn't recognize it. Was so quick. He peeked that I didn't recognize it. And I told my sister, I said, oh my God, there's a head just popped around the corner. This, that, and come on, you're trying to, you're pulling my leg, all this and that. No. And finally, I was like, no. I mean, I know I saw something, this and that. I don't remember exactly how it happened. I think we're just like, maybe she's starting to believe me because she's seeing I'm panicked. And right at this point, he jumps down and lands in the foyer. And he's,
Wait a minute, who?
My brother Dave.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He'd come
This
in.
whole time I've been thinking that was a ghost.
No. My brother
Oh
Dave.
my God.
Yeah. I didn't
Well,
have
if
a
we're going to
ghost
talk
story.
about episodes like that, Shannon's got 1,000 with David.
I didn't know we were talking about somebody scaring you, but okay.
Well, that was
okay.
scary, and I didn't
It
really
was
have
scary,
it involving
No,
ghosts.
100%. But then when you said he then jumped down the foyer, I'm like, wait a minute. A ghost jumped into the foyer and you're just now talking.
That's a full body apparition there.
Yeah, no, it was my brother.
It was Dave.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was, yeah.
Oh my. Okay, I would have had a heart attack.
Yeah, it was something. I remember just for a second, and then
Oh my. Okay.
I think my sister was yelling at him.
Sure. After she
Yeah.
wet her pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So mine, I don't know if it was a ghost, but I still to this day, it was a childhood story that Mom, I can't even remember if we've talked about it since then. But when me, you, and David lived in the trailer park in Wendell, here we are with dusk again. I remember it getting to be dusk and you started yelling for us to come in. Like it was time for us to come in, have dinner, all that stuff. And because it was either a weekday and when we got home, we went out and played until it was time to come in, or it was a weekend and we played until it was time to come in. I don't remember.
Mhm.
But I remember it was in between, like, remember how those two tobacco barns were near the road?
Yep.
And you didn't like us going over there, the tobacco barns, but we did anyway. And we were playing or something. And this dusk. So I just remember it being like a man, young man, whatever, on his bike appeared on the other side of the tobacco barn. And he said, hey. And I look, now in my mind, David's right here beside me. And he said, come here. And I knew, no, you don't come when people ask you, like you're strangers. I knew we don't do that. And so if I had to guess, I was probably third or fourth grade, which means David, no, fourth or fifth grade, because we were at that Christian school. So fourth or fifth grade, which means David would have been what, first or second?
First or second, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
So
second, yeah.
Okay. So I remember going, what? And I remember thinking, can me and David run to our front door faster than this guy can get to us? And I remember shaking my head no and looking to David and grabbing his arm and running to the front porch. And when I turn around, because David was like, what? And I turned around and I said, that guy just stood there. He was on his bike. But he said, hey, come here. And he goes, who? And I said, right there at the tobacco barn. But when I was pointing, he wasn't there. And you could look, you know how it was. You could look to the left or look to the right and nobody was riding their bike.
Right.
And we run in and I tell you, Mom, there's this man on a bike and he said, come here. And you opened the door. I don't know if you remember any of this. You opened the door and you didn't see anybody and you blew it off and we were inside.
Yeah.
But I can seriously think about that to this day and get scared.
Yeah.
And I have asked David years ago when it would come up in conversation, hey, do you remember that happened? And he'd be like, I remember you saying it happened. He didn't see the guy. He remembered me grabbing his arm and running inside and saying it happened, but he didn't see it. I don't think I'm crazy. I know I have an imagination and I know that, I think you can want to see things and you see it, but why would I want to see that? I didn't
want to see that. No.
No. So I feel like I saw him, and whether he was hiding then behind a barn, which I guess very well could be, nevertheless, it's one of my scariest childhood memories.
Yeah.
Scary.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next topic is family member scariest stories. So we all have family members. I think we know who mine is. Who have scary stories. Mom, you start and tell us where you recount a scary story that was shared by a family member.
Okay. So I'm going to go. This is Daddy. The siblings, they were sharecroppers. So they didn't own the house they were in. It was an old house on a farm and they were set way back off the road. And so you knew when people were coming up because you could see the headlights or you could see the cars coming right up. And they would see headlights turning off of the road and coming up that long, I would say it was a long driveway up to the house. And this was, in the dark. So they could hear that. They would hear somebody open a car door, shut the car door, walking up to the house, knocking on the door, and they'd open the door and nobody was there. But they all saw those headlights and they all heard all this other stuff. And then they also, during the day, it was a 2-story. They would see the window upstairs open. They would see a big barrel. And, they used barrels for everything back then. But it was like a wine barrel, whiskey barrel, whatever. And they would see that barrel being turned out and all the water coming out of the window. But when they go over there to the ground, it was not wet. and there was no barrel in the house. So, but they all saw this, every single one of them. Daddy said that at night he would hear kids' voices. And, back then they slept like 6 to the bed because there were so many of them. Anyway, he said they could hear kids' voices and they heard them skating up and down the hallways.
Yeah.
And so, and he was literally scared of that house. He was terrified about it. And then when I'd ask the other siblings, they would recount the same things, but a little bit different because each one of them had, you have your own perception.
Jerry?
That's neat. Well, this involves my brother and
Again?
Yeah, it does. But I don't know if he actually saw it, but let me explain what happened. He runs a security alarm business in Henderson, North Carolina, which is about hour up the road, 45 minutes up the road from Raleigh. The first year I worked with him for almost 10 years. And the first year I was there, just for that year, he rented space in this downtown building. And it was an old building, and apparently it had a history. During World War II, they produced some parts there for U.S. military tanks or something like that. And it was actually one of the biggest production places on the East Coast or something like that. Just happened to be right there. So this is an older building, and he had 2 workers, John and Mike. And John and Mike told me the story how one day they're out there talking out in front of the building. My brother Dave, John, and Mike. The front door to this place was the only entrance. There was no other entrance, not even like a emergency exit.
Mm-hmm.
So John and Mike are talking to Dave, and they said they saw a guy walk up. It was a little curious because they said he had like a crew cut, and he had just the way he was dressed. He looked like from a different time, I guess the 1940s or whatever. They just thought it was odd. Like, who was that guy? And everybody knows everybody in that small town. What was he doing walking in there? So they get finished talking with Dave, and I think Dave left. And I don't even know if Dave saw it, but he was present for it. So John and Mike decided to go back in the building. And they were standing close enough to the front door to know this guy did not come back out. And they're like, who is that guy? Let's check this out. And they said they walked all through there up and down and never saw anybody in there. Now, the thing that really backs this up, I didn't know any other story but that, or know it at the time, but that building was featured on the Tar Heel Traveler on WRAL.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Huh.
And they talked about it and how it had stories of being haunted and whatnot.
Oh, wow.
Wow. How cool.
We'll have to find that and put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd like to go there.
Yeah, no, you will.
That was in 2005, I think. I don't know what the building does now, if it's still rental space or what. But
well, mine were both told today. So, Mom, why don't you take this opportunity and tell another one? Because I think you have another one about. Oh, okay. Tell that one. Yes, tell that one.
Okay, I thought for sure you'd say that one.
God, that should be mine. So that's gonna be mine. You tell it though.
Okay. So Dennis and I had gone to San Francisco for some conference. I don't remember what it was. We stayed in this hotel. It's one of the oldest hotels in San Francisco and very historic, some mobsters and stuff. But I will tell you, you can look this up for the hotel. It's the one that they used to wash the coins, and they still do it to this day. And it came from the women would come in with their gloves, way back in the day, and they didn't want their gloves to get dirty. So the hotel would wash their coins for them. And so they still do it. They have a machine that will wash your coins. So we were staying there. We were in an older part of the hotel. And when I tell you older part, these rooms were small, really small. We spent the night there. I never got any bad feelings whatsoever. But one night I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a man standing beside the bed. And when I tell you beside the bed, he was like right beside. It was in the corner, but it was right beside the bed. I never saw the facial features. I don't remember making those out. I don't remember seeing the feet part, but I remember seeing the rest of him. And he had a white shirt on, very crisp white shirt. He had black pants on that rose higher on the waist and a black cape, but he did not look of this time. He had a black belt with a gold buckle. I'll never forget it. And it was like a square, but the center of it was out. So you could see the center of the square. He was standing there and I jerked back because it startled me. It didn't scare me. It startled me. And then he just disappeared. But I looked around. I didn't see anything. So I just went back to sleep. And I left before Dennis, but, when he got home, he said, Bev, the night that you left, I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw a man standing in the corner. He didn't know about my part. And he said, I saw a man standing in the corner and he had a black cape on. And I said, well, what did you do? He says, nothing. I just went back to sleep. He disappeared. So I felt validated in that one. I was never scared of it, but I remember I was telling you, Shannon, about it. And you said you would have run out of there so fast.
100%. I would have not lasted the night.
Yeah.
No, it didn't bother me at all. I just went right back to sleep. I do recall that being a significant event.
Sure.
Stuff like that doesn't scare me. The only thing ever that has scared me was that house. The rest of it it's interesting to me. And I guess I go look for it and want to see it.
I don't want to see it. And every time I have had encounters, except for in this house, it is with you.
Yeah.
Like I will have encounters with Mom, except for the one at the pet sitting house too. The time in the cemetery, the Oakwood Cemetery.
We ended up meeting up that night with Jerry and Dylan at the restaurant.
That's
I said to you, I said, you know something, I don't remember how it came up, but I said about the two girls having a picnic there. And you were like, what? And I said, you saw those two girls, right? And
that's right.
You said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I made the comment, well, gosh, I was wondering why you never responded to me when I said, look at those girls. That's a strange place to be having a picnic. And
that's right.
You never responded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were two girls and they were dressed in a different time period also.
And the other thing was the time that you and I were at the bed and breakfast in Wilmington.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
we were getting ready to go to sleep. We were sleeping in the same bed. And I think we were facing each other talking.
We were. Yeah.
But we were drifting off.
It was like the tap in the bathtub.
That's right. And it was behind me.
Yeah, it was really squeaky.
That's right.
We knew what it was, but it was being turned on.
That's right. And I remember hearing it and thinking, maybe I'm hearing things. And my eyes got really big. And Mom goes, I heard it too.
And then you held my hand. You kept holding my hand. And I said, it's all right. It's all right.
Full on adults here. We're not talking about me as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I just don't want encounters like that.
Yeah. The Beaufort Cemetery where we went in there and all of this is when I knew that you had what I sort of suspected through the years, but this is when I knew that you had some of this because we went into that cemetery and you just bawled. I mean, started bringing up stuff and you were like hysterically crying, but we walked out of the cemetery and a block and you were perfectly fine. And then I brought that up to you. I said, how do you feel right now? Fine. And so I explained to you, you were picking up.
I remember, and we were just walking. And just for people who maybe have not been to Beaufort or don't know, there is a very old historic cemetery. And so when someone says they were walking through the cemetery, it sort of can be part of your walking path. So it's not abnormal to take a walk, as abnormal as it sounds. It's not abnormal to walk downtown Beaufort and you decide you're going to walk through the cemetery and then out the other side because you can do that. And it's kind of it of course it's peaceful. It's not like the people are bothering you in there, but it is peaceful. But you and I weren't even planning on walking through there.
Right.
And we did. And then, I remember crying and all these thoughts of like these negative things in my life I started talking about, which was really weird. And then, and then we were fine. Well, so that's a great segue to our last topic, which is the areas that we live in. So we talked about this in the beginning. And of course, we'll start with Beaufort. So yes, we all were from the Triangle and you could talk about things that happened downtown Raleigh or whatever. But I feel like, and Mom, you can talk about your area in a second. I feel like that I personally have never lived in an area that has more renowned history than Beaufort does. And a lot of it, it's funny because when I tell people, like if I meet people on podcasts or even traveling, they say, where do you live? And I say Beaufort. And I always have to say, well, there's Beaufort, South Carolina, Beaufort, North Carolina. We're known for where Blackbeard lived. And people are always really intrigued by that. And I go, yeah, no, he really lived here in the early 1700s. And there's a house that's the oldest house in Beaufort called the Hammock House. And that's where he lived. And it was like known as the quote unquote, the White House when he was here because he kind of ran things and he lived there. And we'll put a link down the show notes. It's known for that. And it's known for the ghost part of it is that I guess he hung his wife or killed her in the house or maybe a girlfriend. I don't know. Like some woman in his life. And they say that you can I've heard two stories. They say you can see her hanging at night. Although we've been back there at night several times. I've never seen it. I don't want to see it. So I don't know why I go looking.
Right.
But the other thing they say is that you can see blood on the steps where someone he killed was there. But that's also interesting because it's a private residence and you can't go inside.
Yeah.
So I don't know if someone saw it at some point or the people who live there maybe have reported it. I would never live there, but you can go and see it. It's on Travel Advisor. It's on all these travel destination websites that you can still go in front of the house and see it. You just can't go inside of it. But that, and I think, just with Beaufort, and there's the Beaufort Ghost Walk, which my cousin owns, and we've been on that. Yeah. And he'll take you, they dress up in pirate period wear, and they tell you all the stories about the history that's here. But yeah, I mean, even where we live now, there's some stories about the road we live on and things like that that are kind of terrifying, but I try not to think about them so much.
Yeah.
My mom now lives the North Carolina mountain area, just outside of Blowing Rock.
We are at the Appalachia, and Appalachia is one of the most renowned, not just folklore, but hauntings and just some scary stuff. I'm very cognizant of it, not scared, would love to be up there in the middle of the night. That wouldn't bother me at all. But I just think, we have two big stories from Appalachia that most people maybe the first one, not so much, which was Brown Mountain Lights. And that's where you can look out over the parkway and you can see these lights that nobody's been able to explain. And I did find, because, when I move up here, I'm starting to look stuff up, but I did find where they used to think that it was headlights of these cars going down this road. And so they had some ecological society come up here and study it. And I understand that that's where they were saying it was headlights. But a big flood came through, and I looked, and it wasn't the flood of 1916, which was as big as Helene. But it wiped all the roads out, and they were still seeing the lights, so they can't explain it. But the story here it's really big with the Cherokee. The Cherokees' thoughts on it is that there was a big bloody battle there. People, like the family members and wives and things, would go out with like torches at night, and they were looking for their loved ones that had died in the field. It was pitch black, and anything in Appalachia, if you go at night, there's very little light, if any. And when you're talking about pitch black, that's what you see. And the other one is the Bell Witch. And there's a cool movie about that, but it's a true story. And that was a guy who lived in their home and this is Appalachia, so that's what I'm talking about, quite a few years, but there was a woman that hated him. And the story goes that he swindled her or underhanded got some land that she wanted. I guess he bought it and took advantage of whatever. I don't know, but he got the land that she wanted. So she cursed him. And there were things like poltergeist activities in the house, but it turned out that she really centered everything on him. She tormented this man until he died. And when he died, things kind of stopped. There was a few little things, but kind of stopped. But she said that she was going to return. I don't know what year it was. I can't remember, but she was coming and she was going to take one of his daughters. Like she took his life. And so they've never been able to prove it, but they've never been able to disprove it. And they made a movie about it. I cannot remember but it's a big movie about the Bell.
We'll find it and we'll link it in the show notes.
Okay. But what I would tell you that you need to know about Appalachia, first of all, you don't go, if you're in a cabin or spending some time up here, you don't want to go out at night. Now, I'm not talking about like in my yard. I'm talking about where you're up in like camping or up in the hills and the hollers. You need to be careful about that. So you don't want to go out at night. And if you did, you want to be right at your campsite or whatever, and you want a fire going. While you're out at any point in time, especially at night, you don't look at the trees. That is something you just don't do. If you hear your name called, no, you didn't. If you hear whistling, no, you didn't. And you just don't even talk about it. And so those are three things that is very well known in Appalachia that you don't do.
Oh my God.
I've never experienced those three things, but I have experienced taking my little dogs on a walk. And I told you about this, that I did not tell anybody where I was.
Yes.
I took the dogs and I went on a walk on one of the hiking trails, and I kept hearing noises that I couldn't explain. And then after I got down a ways, I got to thinking, this is probably not good, because I had no protection. And I'll just be honest with you, technically, you aren't supposed to take any kind of weapon on the trails, but you you would be kind of stupid not to have something. So, and you can't even do an open carry, but there's no way I would, and I never will do it again because, I started getting the hair rising on my neck again. And I thought, this is not good. And so I turned around and went back. Not only just for bears and stuff, there's just stuff that you just want to be prepared for.
Honestly, I think in most situations, it's not the animals and critters I'm most scared of.
Right.
It's the other people.
It's not the four-legged, it's the two-legged.
That's right. Speaking of that, with camping, and I didn't know that, but Jerry and I went camping with Pharrell and Betty years ago. Old Fort.
Yeah.
We went camping there, and it was very primitive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no electricity, very primitive. We weren't even prepared for how primitive it was. Tent camping, and we also happened to be there when no one else was there, which was really weird. But I remember that night we had the campfire going and we had Betty and Pharrell tight to us because we were scared. Like, is something going to, know they're here and come attack us or whatever. And we didn't have any protection. Mm-hmm. And the way we were is it was all mountain. So it just went up mountain. And I'm thinking now how often we were like looking, we would even take the flashlight and shine it into the trees and stuff because we were like, we want to know what's around us. And we would see eyes and stuff sometimes knowing they were animals. But I was scared.
Yeah. It was.
I didn't sleep well. I remember thinking, I just can't wait until light.
Right.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's not, you really have to be avid hiker and camper to do that kind of stuff. But even, people who are avid get eaten by bears. And the problem here is we are overrun by the bears right now. But it's not because there's necessarily too many bears. It's because we're moving into their territory. So they're very, very common.
Well, I know we could go on for hours. You could go on for hours about the ghost story.
Yeah.
We would listen because we don't have any more. But we'll have to have you on next Halloween to talk about the follow-up of things that happen in the next year. Before we go, why don't you tell everyone about your business, who is a sponsor of this podcast, and how you're helping hurricane victims this month?
Yeah. So I own a handmade soy company called Southern Oak Artisan, and we are donating 15% of our proceeds to Hurricane Helene relief. And so, we're going to do what we can because there are people right now camping with no heat and no running water, and you can't use the river because it's filthy and it's got contaminants in it right now. So we're going to do everything we can to help out.
So we're going to link down in the show notes how you can shop for our favorite soy candles, and you'll be helping out this effort as well.
Yeah.
Mom, thank you for being here with us as our expert contributor per usual.
I feel like I learned some more stories that I didn't know. And you were full of stories, and it was great.
Yeah. I had a whole lot of others that I couldn't get to. So I feel like I could go another hour or two, but we'll save some of these stories, some of the, next year. And then I'll also have new ones I know. And I plan on doing some ghost hunts, so maybe I'll have some of those. Yeah, I'm looking into those now. I'm working on my kit.
All right. And then we'll link to that if you have your kit ready next time. Well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. We love you.
Yeah, I love you too. I love both of you. Happy hunting. Haunting.
If this episode resonated with you, or if you know of someone who would benefit from what we talked about, please share it with a friend.
It's a great way of supporting the podcast, and we really appreciate it.
Another way of supporting the pod is by leaving us a 5-star review or rating on the platform you are listening to us on.
And go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That also supports us. You can always find us, the show notes, and sponsors who support the podcast at arneradventures.com.
And until next time, enjoy the journey you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Bye-bye.